How good is your class? How does it compare against all of the other classes in Season of Discovery Phase 1? Is it one of the better DPS classes, or is it one of the worst ones? Does it need a little bit of help? Is it one of the best tanks, or is it one of the worst ones? And does it ascend to the God tier? Today we're gonna break it all down, and this is not up for debate anymore. This is not something that is like, maybe this is strong, maybe it's gonna perform really well. We're far enough into Phase 1 to know exactly how every class ranks as it compares to the other classes. So this is going to be the definitive tier list or definitive rankings of all of the classes in Season of Discovery. And I know this one's going to be a little bit brash, a little bit brazen, and that's because this is something that is very much set in stone at this point. This is how the classes are performing unless we see some crazy nerfs or buffs, and things will translate a little bit into the next phase, but we realistically, no one has any idea how every class is going to perform in the next phase. Watch out for any tier lists about that. It's super bait. All right, let's dive in. We're gonna redo the entire tier list, and today we'll do healers, tanks first, and then I'll do DPS. So I'll do healers and tanks first, and then I'll do DPS. Yeah, that's like a pretty simple. And I'm doing this all myself because I don't want to take input from anyone, because this is the definitive. If you're a top tier player, this is where you're going. If you are a middle tier player, I'll try to describe that also. We'll start with tanks, and then we'll make our way down. We'll do tanks and healers first so we can knock them out. Feral tank. Feral tank goes all the way into the D tier. Feral tank, you are god awful. You are the worst tank in the game right now. I'm sorry. Technically, let's be real. I guess B tier, sure. You can run feral tank. You struggle with rage no matter what. Even with the new changes where they made lacerate and mangle cost less rage, you struggle with rage. Your AoE threat is god awful because swipe hits for about 16 to 30 damage. It's a fine off tank just to taunt. You take no damage if you have your tanking runes. It's a good off tank, but realistically, just play feral DPS. If you just need a tank for one of the fights, like an off tank for one of the fights, Feral's a good option. Warrior's a probably better option, but it's fine. Feral tank will put you in B tier. Rogue tank, you're going into the top of B tier. Rogue tanks are going into the top B tier. They're better than feral tanks, but they're worse than everything else. Your AoE threat is mediocre. Your single target threat is phenomenal. You don't take any damage from 90% of the fights, but other tanks are just better. And if you're a rogue, just be DPS. Rogue tank is insane for single target, but that's all you have. So, I mean, you can tab target and you can have pretty good threat, but I wouldn't really stress about it, to be honest. Like, you're fine. You could argue that you're A tier, but not really, because that's where we're going to put Prot Warrior, and you're not as good as Prot Warrior. So, Prot Warrior is better than combat and feral tanking. It is. Prot Warrior is just better than, I mean, feral tank. If I was just to rank them all against each other, feral tank would be at the bottom, then combat. Prot Warrior is good. It brings sunders. I would wager, if you're playing Prot Warrior to its optimality, if you're playing it optimally, I would go dual wield Prot. Not even dual Prot. I would just be a dual wield warrior that was tanking. I would just be a dual wield warrior that was tanking. Pixeloid, thank you so much. So I'd be a dual wield warrior that was tanking, but you can be a normal Prot warrior. Devastate just got nerfed to the ground right before launch of Season of Discovery, Mastery, same. So just know that's what happened to you. But you're still really good. Prot warriors are really good. The only thing is there's other tanks that are gods. Warlocks. Warlock tank, I would argue you're almost on the same tier as Prot. You struggle with AoE threat unless you're playing really well. Maybe you're right below them and better than combat, but you could also be the same as combat in single target situations, but you can also bring some other buffs. So Warlock tanks are in a pretty okay spot. You're in a pretty okay spot, but if you want to be in the raid, like Warlock solo tanking the whole raid, you're just not going to have threat for 90% of the time, and your damage is like okay. I think a Prot tank is easier to tank, but you guys are like basically the exact same. So this is like, you guys are like the exact same. It's an amalgamation of your threat and your DPS. That's what this is. All right. Now for the god tier tanks, fucking Enhanced Shaman. Holy shit. Excuse my language, but Enhanced Shamans are cracked out. You have ridiculous AoE threat. You could be literally, one of the things you could do, because Enhanced Shamans are like worried about their mana if you're moving too fast, don't use Shield Mastery Rune. You literally don't use Shield Mastery Rune for 90% of the raid, except for the second boss and maybe the last boss. Enhanced Shamans can solo tank the entire raid. You actually never need another tank. And what you want, they have the best AoE threat on top of that with Paladins. They're gods, and you never run out of mana if you run Water Shield Rune instead of running Shield. You dual wield and run Water Shield Rune. Boom. Enhanced are literally gods at tanking, and so are prop Paladins. But here's the catch. You kind of actually technically even more, you run a ret tank. So the idea is that prop Paladin, yes, but ret tank also S tier. These guys are insane. Crazy damage, crazy threat. You're so good. Just run a two-hander with the epic weapon, and every now and then maybe throw on a shield. Rets also, or prot tanks, can actually do this crazy thing called dropping any debuff ever. Drop any debuff ever. That's it. Drop any debuff ever. Enhance isn't S tier, sorry, but mana is a big problem. You literally didn't listen to what I just said. Sorry, but that's just a fact. Enhance has 0 issues with mana whatsoever. Literally, just make sure you're running Water Shield. Like, Shaman is beyond S tier. Shaman is better than anything. Shaman is God. Shaman is literally going to be the God tank until probably level 60. Shaman tanks are the best tanks in the game by far. It's not even close as Horde, and then Alliance have Paladins. But like, Paladins aren't even as good as Shamans, but they're great, but they're not as good as Shamans. I'm gonna throw healers on here as well. Priest, let's just say Disc Priest, it's the same thing, who cares? Priest, absolutely S tier healer. Godly in PvP. Priest healer's the fucking most juice thing of all time. It's like you can just instantly heal anyone. If you're doing Warsong Gulch and you're trying to rank, or if you're doing pre-mades, you realize that priests are like the bane of everyone's existence. It's not hunters that are griefing you, it's literally the priests. Priests are so good. You have dispels, you have instant heals, you can output actually a lot of damage, and you can run fucking homunculi, which is one of the best abilities in the whole game. It's one of the best abilities in the whole game. It puts up Sunder Armor, 5 stacks instantly of Sunder Armor. It also puts up a fucking Demo Shout and a Thunderclap with one ability, and it hits for some DPS, and it hits with 3 mobs hitting all the time that break the Water Shield on Water Shield boss. Homunculi is super OP. The only fights you don't use it is a fight that it might drop on, which is like Gelahest. I would not use Homunculi on Gelahest, and maybe you need to use your like Palm, sure. Yeah, this is Homunculi alone makes Disc Priest God tier. The only other healer I would argue that is up there that could be in the God tier but not as good as Priest would be Resto Shaman. Wild Growth is super good. Wild Growth, or did I say Shaman? Sorry, Druid. Wild Growth is super good. Resto Druids are amazing right now, and this is actually going to translate really well to late game raids. This is gonna, like, you're gonna be able to heal so well. Like, these two as a combo are gonna be insane, and then like this is gonna be like right below. In a speed run situation, if I was speed running, you would either run only 1 Disc Priest, or you'd run 1 Disc Priest and an Arcane Mage, because they do output decent damage and they output decent heals. In a real God tier speed run, when we get towards the end of the phase, it's literally going to be 1 Enhanced Shaman, 1 Disc Priest, and everyone else will be DPS, or 1 Ret Tank and 1 Disc Priest, and everyone else will be DPS. The current speedrun world records are about 15 minutes. It's going to be like under 10 minutes when the real pump starts happening. But this is where the healers rank. Arcane Mages are awesome. They're really good as healers, and they're obviously the best boosters ever. The Arcane Mages can just boost you forever and they never die. They're gods. Arcane Mages are awesome. Search for my rare spawn, didn't find it. Let's go back. Okay, Paladin healers, they're okay. Like, I would, I guess, say that the other healers are all in like the same realm as, like, they could be better. They're better healers than an Arcane Mage, less utility, and you'd rather run the other ones. So like, it's a hard argument. It's not like they are B tier, but if you look at it overall, I would rather have a Disc Priest and an Arcane, or like a Resto Druid and an Arcane, than I would Resto Shaman and a Paladin healer. The Paladin healer is really also running Ret anyways, right? So like, maybe you would do like this. This is it, guys. That is where the healers and tanks go. There's arguments to be made for everything realistically, and that's totally fine. Like everything is viable, and the entire game is super easy. But if you're to rate things like that, it's definitely in that order of like what's the best. And Arcane only beats the other healers not as like a throughput of healer, but because it's like more, it's better to bring because it does damage and heals. Like it just does damage and heals. Like that's what it is. Okay. Yeah, and as a priest, you're literally running homunculi. You're a god, and then in PvP, you're a god also. DPS. Okay, guys, DPS. This is it. This is the DPS tier list. Okay, let's do god tier S, A, B, C. Sure, right? Because like it's just, that is what it is. Let's just go in our own little way. Shadow Priest needs buffs. Shadow Priest is the last class that still needs buffs. It's okay. I guess you could put it in B. I mean, we'll see how I rate everything. Shadow Priest just needs buffs. Frost is not a real spec, so we're not bringing it up. Shadow Priest needs buffs. It's just like a fact. Shadow Priest keeps getting buffed, but it's not enough. It's just not enough. Like the 100 parses on Shadow Priest are like 170 DPS. My naked fresh hunter that was missing 6 slots of gear was able to do like 200 DPS, right? So this is phase 1. You can't give a definitive, accurate tier list for phase 2 because we don't know the runes, and anyone that does one should preface it like I prefaced my last one, which is like, we don't know everything, you know, we don't have the runes, we don't know how it's all going to work. So everyone's saying like this is going to be god tier, like you don't know that, you know. I mean, I can argue that Shadow Priest is still going to be garbage next phase. I mean, insane in PvP, but like low-key kind of garbage. But you know, whatever. All right, Enhanced Shaman. Oh, Enhanced Shaman might go into the B tier. I guess we have to see what we rate everything else, you know, but it's Enhanced Shaman's not that great right now, realistically. Just tank, you know, as raw DPS, your DPS is like mediocre. You just tank. It feels bad to say it, but it's unfortunate. Balanced Druids just got some crank. Balanced Druids were down here in fucking Narnia, and then all of a sudden, Blizzard was like, let's give them an instant cast ability that costs 0 mana, or like 3 mana. I think it's 4. I think it costs literally 4 mana, and crits for 680 damage, and is a 6-second CD. Still in the B tier. There you go. You're just barely above Enhanced Shamans. You're still in the B tier. But really good at leveling. But you didn't get buffed enough. But like that ability is kind of OP. It's like it's weirdly scaled too strong. So at least you can put up Fairy Fire. You're in the B tier if we're looking at DPS. Ellie Shaman, fucking, you need a buff also. I'm sorry. Destro Warlock. Destro locks are amazing, and they are by far, I would argue, by far the best caster in the game right now, which puts them maybe at the bottom of S tier, but it's kind of got to be an A tier. No caster actually makes it into the S tier. You are the best caster in the game, though. Like, you just are, okay? If we were to go here, and this is like, I hate looking at this. This is like a bad estimation. Class balance and other statistics. Warlock, it's the best caster. That's really what it is. Like, this is for overall percentiles, so you can see like the top person in all of them. Don't look at this. This right here is misleading. Don't look at this. This is wrong. This is wrong. For every rogue that says rogues are better than warriors, you're wrong, okay? We'll get into that in a second. Mage, I'm just doing one mage. You're kind of B tier, realistically. You have like one fight where you do decent damage, but you're nowhere near the damage of a Destro. Mage just feels really underwhelming, to be honest, as it's like raw DPS output, but it's way too overpowered for AoE. Mage is gonna be so fucking busted in AoE. Mage leveling is busted, mage boosting is busted, mage healing. I would argue that mages should just be damage and healers, but yes, I'm saying fire, but like that's not even really like you can just, we could say just mage, it doesn't matter. I'm just saying mage, okay? Fire mage is slightly below Destro. Arcane is here too. I'm just lumping you together. I'm sorry, but mage isn't as good as warlock. That's okay. That's totally okay. Warlock is the strongest caster right now. Totally okay. Here's the issue. All casters are worse than melees, which feels bad, but that's literally how Classic has always been. Ret Paladin is better than Destro. Ret Paladin is going into the A tier. There's people that would argue that this should be in the S tier, but it's not as good as the other classes we're about to talk about, so it's going into the A tier. Ret Paladin, really, really solid, really, really good DPS, but at the highest level, it won't out DPS the other classes. It does have some crazy AoE on some fights. Divine Storm is crack. And if you're a rep, I think you bring a Ret Paladin, you should just tank if you're like optimizing, but it's really good. Lock brings so much to raid. Curse of Recklessness, Soulstone and Hellstone. You shouldn't ever need Soulstone, so that's a moot argument. Bringing Soulstone as utility, that just means your raid is bad in this specific tier list. Hellstone is a good argument. Hellstone is a lot. Curse of Wreck, by far better than both of those though. Yes, Curse of Wreck is god tier. You always bring a warlock. Curse of Wreck is amazing. Okay, here we go with the god tier classes. Actually, sorry, the S tier. Let's go up in an S tier. Curse of Wreck is the literal reason you used to bring a warlock in back of the day anyways. Curse of Wreck, warlocks, there you go. Now you actually do damage as well, but Curse of Wreck is what you do. That's what it is. All right, let's go with Feral Druid DPS. S tier. You're not a god. You're not a god. If you have really good RNG, some fights you would crank. Like if you're, there's some fights that are like 30 seconds long. And if you got 3 Omen of Clarity procs, you would literally, and you got crits on those shreds, you would delete everything. You always bring a Feral Druid because you always need Wind Fury. In top groups, you're actually bringing 2 Feral Druids because you have so much melee. Feral Druid is the most required class in like the most sought after class to be in any group for sure. If I'm playing any class, I want a Feral Druid in my group. Wind Fury is god tier, but Feral Druid also has actual DPS. Feral Druid rotation, very simple. Everyone's gonna tell you that it's hard. They're lying to you. Power shifting is pressing one button. That's what power shifting is, literally pressing one button. That's what it is. But your damage can be insane, right? You could do 400 DPS on a single target fight if you have great RNG. So Feral Druids are great. But are they as good as the next class? No. No. There's fights where you could out DPS the hunter, but on average, your hunter will always out DPS the Feral Druid overall. The best Feral Druids should out DPS 99.999% of hunters. I don't know if I've seen a really, really good hunter have a good overall in a raid yet. Feral Druids, one thing that's about to cuck all Feral Druids on overall damage, I would rather bring a Feral Druid than a hunter. I would rather bring a Feral Druid than a hunter. One thing that's about to absolutely giga cuck Feral Druids on the overall rankings, if we were to look at overall, I'm curious if any of you guys are going to guess this. What's gonna absolutely cuck Feral Druids? Don't ignore this rogue, by the way. This guy's cheating, but I like that this guy cheated. But this guy's whole group cheated, but I like that they did it. I love it. It's like the most classic thing ever. Summon Fell Hunter, 6.3k damage. Summon Tracking Hound, 6.3k damage. Fucking summon Ghost Saber. This guy's a Pokemon trainer. This is what's gonna cuck Feral Druids on overall. Gamura. Gamura, the second boss in the raid, is a turtle who takes 99, it might be 90, but 99% less damage from physical damage. Feral Druids love to switch to Sunfire here. You switch your glove rune to Sunfire. Not anymore, you don't. Why not? Why not do you go brown cow Sunfire? Because you have to put the mangle debuff up. Because deep wounds is fucking broken, and deep wounds ticks for over 1,000 damage on this fight. So you have to give it 30% extra damage. You're screwed, Feral Druids. Now you're all support to warriors again. How is this in the game? Is this broken? I mean, this is more damage for the whole raid. Your
every weekend Sarf can't play. But
your rogues do a ton more damage on this fight as well, right? Like rogues can do a ton of damage on this fight because they're doing bleeds, right? Saber Slash is their main ability. Psycho, thanks for the raid, brother. Saber Slash is their main ability, and it's the bleed that does all of their damage on this. Like rogues are doing poison and bleed damage, right? You're screwed. As a Feral Druid, it's no longer can you do damage very well. So also, if anyone's wondering about how to parse, this fight sucks butts, Gelahast. The only way to really parse this fight would be for everyone else to stop DPS when you could fight the boss, or to have a really shitty group where everyone does really low damage except for you, because the longer amount of time that you could have on the uptime phases is way more damage you could do. Gelahast should be removed from logs. Anyways, that is why Feral Druids are going to lose on overall, okay? Deep Wounds is too crank. Feral Druids got bumped down. BM Hunter is the easiest class ever to play. You don't have to melee weave, but you should. I will release a melee weaving guide tomorrow. You should melee weave. Always melee weave as BM because you're just doing nothing. You're an auto shot simulator if you're not melee weaving. It's so easy. Marksman, in an ideal situation, other than overall throughout the raid, but in like a perfect fight with my BIS gear, I would destroy everyone as marksman. But here's the catch. You also do 0 damage to Gamura, that fucking turtle boss. You can't do any damage to that boss as marksman. It's just, which knocks you down on overall. Sure, okay? All right. Next, we have 2 DPS classes left. The warrior and the rogue. And both of these were the best 2 DPS classes in all of classic World of Warcraft. They've always been the best classes in World of Warcraft Classic. And everybody was like, warriors are going to suck phase 1. Well, joke's on you. Rogue is a god tier class. Absolutely guaranteed. Rogue is a god tier class. And on average, your rogue is going to do way more damage than your warrior, because your warrior probably isn't that good. That's just fair. That's fine to say. It's fine to be that way. It's okay. Don't be mad about it. It's easier to play rogue than it is to play warrior. It's not hard to play warrior, but to min-max, it's easier to be like decent on rogue. There's a lot of things you can do to min-max rogue. Uptime is ridiculously important, but on average, your group is probably going to see a rogue beat warriors, other than if you have a good warrior who's going to just destroy. Every good warrior is going to destroy everyone. No one is going to be close to every good warrior. It's like, bam, 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 bam. Like if we go back to this is a good, now this is good. If we go to max, now this is good. Look at the difference here of the best warrior and the best rogue. Warriors bring Sunder Armors, warriors bring Battle Shout, warriors Deep Wounds is broken. It's the Wrath Deep Wounds, so it's scaling, and it's on top of that, warriors can use dual wield for everything in the raid, except for then on the last boss, warriors are going to be like, oh my god, you know what I'm going to do? Look at let's look at this. Let's look at the last boss. Let's look at the last boss, and let's look at, oh shit, this Alondo guy, and we got screwed. Ignore my damage on this fight. We got screwed because Alondo, look at the damage. I was at 300 DPS on this fight, and we forgot to drop stacks. So grief. It's like half of the fight. It's a fourth of the fight where you just can't damage. But what warriors do is they fucking retaliation. They summon a ton of ads and they retal for 5,000 extra damage on this fight. 800 DPS. Just put on a two-hander and retal. Dual wield and fury, or dual wield and two-hander are just god tier specs. Both of them are absolutely insane. And warriors are by far the strongest DPS class in the game right now. It's not even close, to be really honest. The second best is definitely rogue, and on overall and like a speed run, rogues are looking really, really good. I would argue that a good warrior in a speed run should beat the rogues every time, but a good rogue can do really, really well on overall speed runs. If you're running a speed run, you have to play BM because you don't have marksman, you don't have the mana. These classes are above everyone else. It is just what it is. Destro is the best caster. Every other caster is okay. Fire's okay. Also, no, warriors don't even need to sunder 99% of the time because you have homunculus. There's some fights where it's better to sunder, but you have homunculus. So that is a spot on. This is like a, I'm sorry if this angers you, but this is what things are. Tier list, like this is like the facts tier list. Now there's no real debates anymore tier list. In your raid, if you out DPS anyone, if you are in a raid and like you're the balanced druid and you're beating everybody in your raid, that's fine. But that's not a good explanation of where the classes are. If you are seeing hunters, if you're in a raid and you always see hunters as the #1 DPS, that's not an estimation of where hunters are, saying hunters are the best class. They're not. And a lot of times they're losing to the feral DPS. It's just, this is where the classes all rank. In your raids, it might show up to be different all the time. BM hunter is super easy. You could literally ignore doing damage and have your pet do half your DPS. But this is where things rank if we were really to put them. And I didn't choose assassination or affliction. It's all in there. The caveat of arguing that warriors and rogues need gear, because I know someone in the comments is going to argue warriors need gear to be able to do DPS. Yeah, it's World of Warcraft. Warriors have always needed gear to do good damage. And there you have it. That is a full ranking of all of the classes in World of Warcraft Season of Discovery. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. If you want more details or want more guides or any news on SoD coming out, make sure, of course, to follow the page. If you disagree with me, let me know in the comments. But I'm just saying, if you are doing more damage than one of the classes that was ranked higher than you or performing better than them, then that is a skill difference that you are playing. You are outplaying the other people in your raid. So just know this is how the classes rank without opinions being put into it. It's just how good they really are. Anyways, guys, I will see you all on the next one, and happy holidays.